Hey everyone, Aaron here with Elite Watersports. This video is all about mastering light wind techniques. We got a bunch to add to this video, so stay tuned. Let me get into the details and hang tight. I'm going to make you a better kiter in light winds. So this video being all about learning light wind techniques to get you out in the water more frequent. If you're a kiteboarder, a wind winger, or anybody seeking wind, even on a sailboat, we just want to be out in the water. That's the ultimate goal. With this video being all about kiting, we're going to get into the actual gear we're using to make you a better rider. We're also going to get into the techniques of how to fly your kite, also how to edge your board properly to increase power and efficiency. So let's get right into the gear portion. So we're going to get into the equipment details to make you a better light wind kiter. Let's first talk about the kite. Everybody's really kind of getting the vibe on the beach, like, I don't want to fly a 17, or they hear other people talk about, like, I never fly anything over a 12. Well, if it wasn't for this 17, man, I got to tell you, I've never been able to do a triple front roll board off on anything smaller than that. But as I progress and get more comfortable with that, maybe I can transfer that same, technique or same, ability over to a 15, down to a 12, down to a 9. So I always start my hardest tricks on a 17 and then start progressively going down to smaller and smaller and smaller kites. Adding a board that's much larger, like a 165, will also empower me to get out on those lighter breezes. But you don't have to go that route. It's just all about how much power you want to generate on whatever kite you choose for the day. So if I go with this 165 and a 17, I can almost guarantee that I'm going to have a good session in 10 knots. But if I'm rocking a 135, I'm going to be barely able to go. It's just setting expectations. So say if I'm on the 135 and a 17 meter kite and say 12 to 13 knots, I'm going to be barely able to, say, do a jump about 5 to 6, 10 feet up in the air. That's setting expectations. But if I'm able to hold down the 17 and 12 knots and 13 knots on a 165, I'm going to be so much more powered up so I can hold an edge, get more speed, get more apparent wind speed, and be able to jump bigger. My perfect combo for the 17 is in that 145 to 150 range, but there's no doubt 165 is going to get me out in the water and lighter breezes. Of course, we can add these extensions. What do extensions do? Well, those lengthen our lines so our wind window is larger. When you have a larger wind window, that kite's able to fly further across it, increasing your power and holding that power longer than your standard length lines. Most kites on the market these days are 22 to maybe 24 meters max. By adding 4 meter or even just 3 meter extensions, you're going to actually increase that wind window, increase your power band, or your power band like on a motorcycle, where it holds that horsepower all the way through the whole entire power stroke down. Well, adding those extensions are going to do that. So before we enter the water, let's go over a little bit of safety advice. Here in St. Petersburg, we have knee to waist deep water. That allows us to progress really easily in lighter breezes. When you enter those deeper waters on the edges of our sandbars, of course, those challenges are exponentially going to grow. If you're not comfortable with relaunching your kite in light winds, we suggest you to practice first in shallow water. We have a great video on our YouTube page that goes over 5 different techniques to relaunch your kite in light breezes that you can transfer over even when you get into foiling or in a deep water scenario. So make sure you watch that video and master those techniques first. So this next part of the video, we're actually going to go out into the water and show you a bunch of different kite techniques to both avoid scenarios and to make you more efficient with kite flying to get you up on the board and more efficiently riding across the water. Here we are out on the sandbar here at the Skyway Bridge. The first thing we're going to learn is to do a down loop water start. Remember, we have a video intro to kite looping just in case you need to perfect that. That goes into a great deal on how to master the kite side of this. The water start is going to look like this. In light winds, you got to make sure that your kite is at 12 o'clock the whole time. That's your main focus. And right now I'm setting myself up to go to the left. So I have the kite on the right, and my left side of the board is aiming downwind. I'm going to go ahead and commit to that loop. And remember, I need that power, so I'm going to keep that bar in. I aim downwind for a second and then start applying that edge immediately. You can see how fast I'm going right out of the gate. So kiting in light winds, say like you crash, or maybe you're drifting in deep water, or maybe if you're even standing here, you don't have a lot of breeze on it, it's going to be really hard to get that kite back up to 12 o'clock. So to solve that problem, we have a saying, when in doubt, loop it out. And what I mean by that is if this kite gets so low, instead of struggling getting it back up to 12 o'clock, what you can do is just initiate that down loop. How to make that down loop a lot tighter is by reaching up to this line and really pulling on it. Here I go. So when in doubt, loop it out. It's getting low. I don't want to struggle getting it back up. I'm going to reach up. And you can see how much power I've generated by bringing that kite back into the wind window, and now the kite's nice and high, and a high kite is a happy kite. One huge technique I want to talk about is that when you're in light breezes, and if you have the ability to stand or even swim, if that kite's not responding, if it's too far above your head, maybe beyond your head, or maybe it's not getting enough power for you to give input into it, you can actually stand up and walk into the breeze. That'll add power to the kite. If you're swimming in deep water, that's you swimming upwind, trying to add power to your kite, and that's just you walking into the breeze. Once you've mastered kind of walking into the breeze, another technique you can do is not overshoot your bar. If you're overshooting your bar, that kind of grabs too much wind, the angle of attack is increased, and the kite's going to fall back into the wind window. So if you reach up a little bit above your bar to like this D-power strap, while walking into the breeze, you want to sheet out, and you can actually grab these front lines and kind of pump your sail, pump your kite, and that butterfly affects it into the wind window, gets that wind to flow through the canopy a little bit easier, and then boom, the kite's back up to 12 o'clock, powered up again. Our next technique is making this board more efficient across the water, and we're going to use these 4 things called fins, and not so much our rail. Everybody knows about kiteboarding. If we add more tension to our lines, we're going to generate more power. But in light winds, we don't want to add more tension to our lines by simply using only our edge. We're going to do kind of a hybrid, more featuring or more focus on our fins by flattening the board out. How we get into that technique is simply flattening the board, shifting and twisting at the hips so that the nose of the board is more aimed into the breeze, and really tracking on these fins. One technique is to really flatten out on your front foot, so pushing almost down on your front foot and twisting the board into the breeze. Another technique is by shifting your hips forward, so almost like you're putting more weight on your front foot, but really you're just equally distributing your weight. And that's what this is going to look like. So as I get started, I want to flatten the board out, crosswind, and then start shifting the board and shifting my weight forward. So I'm going to give you an example of me too heavy on my edge. That's going to be everything I have right in my edge, trying to get upwind. But if I flatten it out by pushing on my front toe and shifting my head forward, you can see the board flattens out. And all of a sudden, I've done nothing different on the kite. And now I'm going much faster on the same angle. We're going to do the same demonstration over again. It's going to be me too heavy on my edge. And now what I want to do is get it on top of the board a little bit, flatten it out. I'm going to angle those fins into the breeze, also shifting my hips forward. So now I'm using more of my fins than I am my rail. And you know what? Now the wind's up, so I'm going to grab my 135. I'm going to stay on my 17. I want to be powered up to learn some new tricks. Let's see what this thing has. And you know what? Get some hang time out of it with low consequences because we're in lighter breeze. Of course, a lot of the techniques in this video you can transfer throughout all of kiteboarding, whether you're foiling, whether you're in high winds or light winds, it doesn't matter. Learning how to down loop water start is a super cool tool to have in your box. Also, just the technique of flattening your board out will make you a more efficient rider, so you can grind even higher angles upwind. But don't forget about the equipment. Having a 17, having longer lines, also a bigger board is going to increase the amount of days that you can have out on the water. Some of these techniques, obviously, you want to practice with a little bit more breeze and slowly test your limits to get lower and lower and lower and to be more confident out on the water. We're here to help. This is Aaron with Elite Watersports. If you have any other questions or concerns or anything on equipment, of course, the shop can help, or leave it in the comment sections. Please don't forget to subscribe and hit that like button. We'll see you on the water.